To be beautiful, one must be born beautiful, and in order to seem beautiful, one must suffer, says an old French proverb. It's scary to think what these women were ready for the sake of incomprehensible standards of beauty. We bring you 10 of the deadliest fashion trends of the past that really killed. What items of clothing killed fashionistas? What an incredibly popular wardrobe item people could compare with an instrument of torture. Why were crinolines so dangerous? Where are the rats in the hairstyles? What object, in the truest sense of the word, killed men? And is it true that even a fashionable color was deadly? And finally, what will take the first place in our killer rating of victims sacrificed on the altar of beauty? We're there. Today's procedures invented for hair. In past centuries, they were treated much harsher. When the fashion revolution took place under Tsar Peter I, ladies have become in European fashion like this. Wigs have become the most fashionable accessory of the century. Under Queen Elizabeth Petrovna, a wig cost $5 and a put of wheat only 64 cents. At what were wigs, both women and men, walking in them, of course, was not very convenient. At the end of the 18th century, wigs went out of fashion. These are intricate designs they began to make from their own hair. They were called the fountain. A frame made of wooden rods was inserted into the head of the lady. Lace, feathers, and flowers were stuck. Desperate women of fashion erected structures in the form of ships and frigates. Such beauty was not taken apart for weeks. It was wildly uncomfortable to walk with it. This is how this fashion trend is described. Ivan Turgenev in The Nest of Nobles. With the words of her heroine, "They will put you," she said, "in old age a fork on your head, comb your hair all the way to the top, smear it with grease, sprinkle with flour, stick iron pins. You won't wash yourself after. You can't visit without powder. People will be offended. Torment?" Of course, sleeping with such a thing on your head was only possible while sitting. Add in the insects that lived there, and which were impossible to even scratch your head. But this is not the worst. After all, it was possible to catch the hair on the trees and just get stuck. In such constructions, on the head of a lady, not only fleas or moths, but also real rats settled, attracted by the smell of fat, which, like glue, held this whole structure. And rodents are known to carry many dangerous diseases. Ladies even put cages around their hair at night to keep the mice farther away. Tell me, what could be more disgusting than rodents in your hair? If someone says that the mini is uncomfortable, then remember the train of the dress. So, the train of the dress, the coronation dress of Empress Catherine Roman II, was carried by 50 pages, because it was 230 feet long and 23 feet wide. In the 70s of the 19th centuries, the plume generally became gigantic. Let us remember that this was a time when plague, cholera, and typhoid epidemics were raging. Infected people walked the streets, all the street dirt collected under the plume, and the peacock's tail became the source of many deadly diseases. Secular ladies, in such luxury, swept the city streets, collecting pathogenic bacteria on expensive fabric. Party dresses haven't been washed in years. There was a bomb in the wardrobe, slow action, and few associated the disease that broke out in the house with the dress that the maid decided to clean. And in 1870, the bustle was added to the long train of the dress. Walking in it was wildly uncomfortable, because the knees were tightly pulled together. Add here a corset that tied the waist to the limit, as well as high heels. Ladies began to suffer due to the curvature of posture, and the disease was even called Greek slope. To sit down in a bustle, it was possible only sideways. And in 1910 lame skirts became fashionable. They tied the knees and narrowed even more at the ankles. Even borders have become insurmountable barriers for fashionistas. As a result, the girls limped, walked with small steps, and often fell. Feminists compared lame skirts to prisoners' shackles. The corset has been an integral part of women's lives for several centuries. Even in Spain, when they pulled their waists up to 20 centimeters, they called him an instrument of torture. Over time, instead of iron corsets, whalebone corsets appeared. Why do you think girls used smelling salts so often in the past? Because they were too sensitive? The thing is that they simply had nothing to breathe, so they fainted. Such skeletons of the dress caused suffocation attacks. They deformed the chest and squeezed the internal organs, displaced the stomach, bringing irreparable harm to health. In Britain, they even made special swooning rooms in which the ladies at the ball, wrapped in a corset, could come to their senses. Taking off a corset during pregnancy was considered bad manners. This led to dire consequences. Fashionistas of the late 19th century compared the volume of their waist in a corset with the volume of the neck of their male admirers. To become even slimmer, they even removed a couple of lower ribs, and noticed this when there was no full anesthesia yet. Another deadly danger that dresses carried is their color. At the end of the 18th century, such a shade, Parisian green, came into fashion. It has become a symbol of wealth and luxury. And they got it by mixing copper sulfate, potassium, and white arsenic in a solution. It caused headaches, poisoning, ulcers, and scabs on the skin. In such fashionable dresses it was dangerous, even to sweat. Sweat was reabsorbed into the skin, already with poison. And they used Parisian green in everything, on accessories and children's toys, to decorate dishes. And the richest even painted the walls with it and suffered after. In the middle of the 19th century, coral, magenta, lilac, and carmine came into fashion. Received such saturated colors, thanks to new aniline dyes. Suffered, not only health, but also the appearance of secular beauties. From an excess of nitrobenzene, the skin became ash gray, and the lips dark.